Good morning, Year 4. Our maths this week, we are moving on to look at decimals. Now, it's really important to remember everything we've learnt in fractions because it will come in handy in this new topic. Fractions and decimals are very linked together and you'll soon see and understand why. So today we're going to look at recognising tenths and hundredths. In our vocabulary, we have decimal, fraction, tenths, hundredths, decimal point, place value and equivalent. So remember that word equivalent, it means two things that are equal in maths. So your anchor task then, have a look at these pictures and which fractions underneath may be represented through this picture. So it might be the shaded, but it also might be the unshaded sections of the picture. Okay, so there may be more than one answer, but there might be no answer at all for some of them. There may be an odd one out. So have a look at each picture and think about each possibility. Okay, pause the video and have a go now. Right then, so our first picture, it might show 4 tenths, but it might also show 6 tenths. We haven't got 6 tenths down here, so our first one is 4 tenths is our first picture. So picture 2, it might show 8 tenths, but it could also show 2 tenths. Picture 3 shows 5 tenths. Now we haven't got 5 tenths there, so that's our odd one out. Picture 4 then might show 9 tenths, but it could also just show 1 tenth because 1 tenth is unshaded. And then picture 5, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths shaded, which we haven't got here, but we have got 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths unshaded, so we can match that up there. And finally then number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tenths are shaded and 3 tenths are unshaded. Okay, so well done if you got those correct. That's a little bit tricky. So moving on to look at tenths and hundredths and the relationship between them then. Here is our Dean's 100 square. So if we looked at one square, one small square within this 100 square, we know that one square, each square is 1 out of 100 equal squares. So each square represents 1 hundredth. Okay, but then if we started to look at rows, so if I shaded in an entire row of squares, each row is 1 out of, how many equal rows have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1 row out of 10 equal rows. So each row would represent 1 tenth. Now each row could also represent another fraction, because if your denominator was 100, so you are looking at each small square, then how many squares have I shaded in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's also showing 10 100ths. And do you see how these two fractions are equivalent? They are the same. So 1 tenth is equivalent to 10 100ths. So having a look at this sentence then, what do we know about tenths and hundredths? Okay, so we know that 1 tenth is 10 hundredths. Well done if you got that. So for bronze then, you have this table to fill in. So you have the pictures to help you and you need to fill in the boxes that are empty. So at the beginning, the first one is done for you. So you have a picture of your Dean square and you have 2 rows shaded in. So you know that that shows 2 tenths, but you also know that that shows 20 hundredths. So this next one, you've got the picture shaded in. So you need to tell me how many rows are shaded, so how many tenths, and how many small 100 squares are shaded, so how many hundredths. Moving on to the next one though, you have not got the picture coloured in. So you know that yours needs to represent 3/10, so you need to shade in your deans so it shows 3/10, and then work out how many hundredths that would be equivalent to. So you are filling in the gaps for each of the rows of your table for bronze. So pause the video and have a go. Moving on to silver, then you are looking at true or false questions. So 34 hundredths can be partitioned into 3/10 and 4 hundredths. Well, let's try it then. 3/10, well, we know that 1/10 is one row and we need 3 of them. So 1, 2, 3. So that's 3/10 and 4 hundredths. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, is that the same as 34 hundredths? Well, let's count. I know I've got 10, 20, 30 hundredths there, 31, 32, 33, 34. So yes, it's true. Okay, moving into another one then. 51 hundredths can be partitioned into 1/10 and 5 hundredths. So think about how I would work this out to check whether it's true or false. Okay, so I would of course have a go using my deans to see if it makes sense. So 51 hundredths partitioned into 1/10. Okay, so 1/10 and 5 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's count then. So I know that I've got 10 hundredths here and 5 more. 10 and 5 is 15. Also, I'm only showing 15 hundredths here, but this says 51 hundredths. So this time it is false. So for silver, you have 2 questions, true or false, with pictures to help you. And then you have some more questions to complete without the pictures to see if you can show your understanding about the equivalent between tenths and hundredths. For gold then, we're using part whole models, okay? So you have your parts and you need to make your whole. So here I have 8/10 and 3 hundredths, and I need to combine those to show how many hundredths I have all together. Okay, so to do that I need to make sure they've both got the same denominator. Well, this figure to my right is already in hundredths, so that's absolutely no problem at all, but this one is in tenths. But using my understanding of equivalent fractions, I know that 8/10 is equivalent to 80 hundredths, thinking about my rows in my Dean square. So now I could add them together to find my answer. So 80 add 3 is 83. Okay. So now I've done one for you, let's do one together and then you can have a go at one independently. So we have 21 hundredths, so remembering we need to change our 7/10 into having 100 as its denominator. Thinking about our equivalents then, 7 rows in our 100 square of Deans would be how many hundredths? It would be 70. And then we'd need to add these two numbers together. So hopefully the answer that you got was 91 hundredths. So now thinking about what we've done with our steps, have a go at this last one yourself. Okay then, so you should have worked out that 2/10 is the same as 21 hundredths, and 20 as 31 hundredths is 51 hundredths. So your answer is 51 hundredths. Okay then, year 4, your goal questions are completing your part whole model, combining those parts together to make a whole. If you complete that, you're moving on to platinum. And what Essen has done here is she has partitioned her numbers in different ways. So she's not always partitioned it into tens and hundreds. Sometimes she's mixed them up. For example, here she's used 13 hundredths. So she's shown me 3 ways to partition the same fraction. So she's used 53 hundredths and she's partitioned it 3 different ways. And for platinum, you are going to do the same thing. So using her method, you would partition your question 3 different ways using part-whole model. Okay. I'm not going to give you any more input into your platinum because you now should be able to do this independently if you are working on platinum level. So we look forward to seeing what you produce in maths today, and if you need any help at all, then please do send a message.